Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Swa, and this is The Art of Building. Today, we're going to go over the next in our tool series, circular saw. This one's a cordless one. I'm going to go over some different types, some of the features that are pretty common among all of them, give you a little bit of an idea of what to look for if you're looking to get one for yourself. So let's get right into it. Okay, we're going to talk about circular saws today. We've got two different kinds here that we're looking at. Obviously, corded, cordless. I'm going to take the battery out just for this. These are both what I've heard called sidewinders. They are a direct drive. This is the motor. The shaft of the motor comes out this way and the blade is directly mounted onto that motor shaft. This saw is the same kind. The only difference here is that this one's on the left side of the handle, where this one's on the right side of the handle. That can come into play when you're doing cutting. For me, as a right-handed person, I'm holding the board here. I can see the edge of the blade. The waste is on this side. That's ideal for a right-handed person. A left-handed person might like this better because you're standing on the opposite side. I'm not left-handed, so I'm not going to assume that, but something you might think about. The other difference is these, neither one of these is a worm drive. Worm drives are really common. They're used by framers all the time. The difference with the worm drive is you've got a motor that's mounted in line with the saw with a worm gear driving the blade. So you get a little more torque, it's a little more powerful, a little heavier. It's a little bit different configuration. A lot of times the handle is farther back behind the saw. These are all preferences. I don't run a worm drive because I don't do framing all day long every day. If I did, I would definitely have one. This corded saw is going to come in a range from, you can probably get it down to 6.5. This is a 7.25. They'll go up to 16 inches. You can get 10s and 12s and 14s and different configurations. The corded saw is going to have a lot more power. You're not going to run out of juice. It's going to be able to make deeper cuts. This one, I believe, cuts to about 2 5/8 of an inch deep. And then this one is a 6.5 inch blade. This only cuts to, I believe, 2 1/4, maybe 2 1/8. They're both good saws. They have different applications. This one gives you a lot more versatility, but you've got to keep a battery on hand. This is a smaller battery. Usually I use like an 8 amp hour battery instead, or a 12, something bigger, because this is going to draw a lot of power. For the features, I'm just going to focus on this. We'll get this guy out of the way for now. As we look at this saw, let's go through just the different features you're going to find on most saws. Grip, obviously. Trigger, it's locked. Safety, pull the safety down. Now you can engage the trigger. The front handle is for control, to help you steer the saw. You've got a guard. The guard, behind the guard, you have a shaft lock. You have a retractable guard. If you hold down the shaft lock button and spin the blade, you can get it to where it locks. Once the blade is locked, you can take your tool out of your onboard storage, which in this case it's a hex wrench. Sometimes it might be a full open-end wrench or box wrench to sit on that. These screws a lot of times are a left-hand thread. Because of the direction of the blade spinning, that will help keep the bolt engaged and not loosen up while you cut. So you always have to check the direction. This one's a left-hand thread. We have the base of the saw. Really good idea. This, I do like this base. It's pretty flat as you look across the bottom of it. The base has markings along the side. This 0 is supposed to line up with where that blade would finish a cut on the surface of the material you're cutting. And it goes to 8 inches. I don't use this a ton, but it's nice to have on there. These measurements up here indicate a distance away from the blade. That 0 is supposed to indicate that line should be that edge of the blade because the blade is approximately that thick. And then if you were to roll the saw to a 45, the edge of the blade would be at this mark here. I've highlighted the ones on here. Hopefully you can see them better on camera. But they are, I highlighted them because they're not marked when you buy it out of the store. So we also have on this side of the saw, we have our depth gauge, and that allows the saw to cut to different depths. That lever locks it. There is a scale back here that's a little harder to see that will tell you what depth you're at if you're just trying to set it to a rough depth, say for cutting plywood. Normally my cut depth is going to be through my material, and I want the material to stop at the bottom of the gullet there, that cut out in the blade. That's where I want the material to stop. That'll allow most of the material that you're cutting out to eject all the debris. Incidentally, these little slots in the blades have all different kinds of these, but they're basically there so that as the blade heats up as you're using it and it wants to expand, this lets it move without deforming and getting out of shape. The number of teeth is important on this because this is a 40 tooth on a 6.5 inch blade. That's a pretty fine blade for this saw. I also have this, I believe, is a 24 tooth. So this is more of a general purpose, cross-cutting, ripping. This is going to be more of a finished blade and less so for ripping. We'll get into that in a minute. We also have the angle adjustment. If you're going to cut a bevel, you can roll the base plate. There are single degree increments on this scale. That's pretty nice. Some of them go by 5s, and it's a lot harder to be accurate with that. On the front here, we have a slot that accepts a rip fence, which this is off of a different saw that I have, but it does fit. I actually like this design because it's at an angle. When you tighten it down, it's pushing this in against the saw, not just straight down like a lot of them do, and it keeps this from moving this way and this way to keep it true while you're cutting. You set that to a specific width, you can run it along the edge of the board, and it'll make a parallel cut to the edge of the board. So the rip fence is a key feature to have. Let's see, what else do we have? I think that's pretty much it for the features of it. Obviously, this is where the battery goes. Different saws are going to go about accomplishing all of these things in different ways. They may have a different handle, different miter gauge, but essentially every saw is trying to do the same thing. And I'm not sponsored by Milwaukee. I buy all my tools myself. I bought this because I have the Milwaukee set, which is kind of how people go. You'll have DeWalt's or Makita's, Milwaukee, and you'll stick with it because of the battery. I do like the Milwaukees overall. They're not perfect. Every manufacturer has different good quality tools and maybe not so good tools. Milwaukee overall I like. I do like the base plate. This saw is a decent saw. I wouldn't use it for framing all day, but it's good for the amount of cutting that I need to do because I'm also doing other welding and metalworking, and so I don't specifically get just woodworking tools, but this is a good overall. So I would give it a shot. So that's a basic overview of this saw, and the next video is going to cover some different types of cuts and techniques. I hope you can join us.